Hello devs, welcome. Let's continue our journey of creating our first HTML document. That's our first website using HTML. So in this chapter we are going to cover what an HTML element is, what HTML attributes are, and styling in HTML. HTML elements. So this is the overview of the HTML elements. We are going to take a look at what they are. We are going to take a look at a block element, an inline element, nested HTML element, and what empty HTML elements. So what HTML elements are: block and inline elements, nested HTML elements, and an empty HTML element. Talking about HTML elements, an HTML element usually consists of a start tag and end tag. It consists of a start tag and end tag. So this is an HTML element. It has the starting tag here and the ending tag, a starting tag and the ending tag. So the whole of this thing is the HTML elements, including the content inside is what an HTML element are. HTML element is a starting tag and an ending tag, the starting tag and the ending tag. So with what is inside makes it the whole of it an HTML element. Block elements and an inline element. Block element and inline element. Talking of a block element takes the full width of the screen. They are elements that takes the full width of the screen. That is what an HTML block elements are. They take the full width of the screen. That's 100%. And an inline element takes the width of its content. It takes the width of its content. If its content is 50 pixels, it is going to be 50 pixels. If its content is 70 pixels, it's going to be 70 pixels. By the block elements, it takes the full width of the screen. That's 100%. That's what an HTML block element is. And the inline element takes the width of its content. Next on the list is HTML nested elements. HTML nested elements. So the nested elements are elements in another element. Yes, HTML elements they can be nested. Yes, that's an element in another element. So the HTML document we are going to write is going to be nested. I've never seen an HTML element that is never nested before. All HTML documents are nested. So from the structure that we looked at earlier on, the HTML elements that contain the head tag and the body tag, so it was a nested element. Now let's take a look at what an empty element are. An empty element, they are elements with no content. Yes, they have no content and they have no ending tag. They have no content and they have ending tag. Example is the BR elements and an HR element. The BR element and then the HR element. Let's take a look at some of the examples of the block element and the inline element. So these are block elements on the left side of the screen and this inline elements on the right side of the screen. So the block elements, we have article, aside, div, field set, figure, footer, form, h1, hr, header, section, and the rest. And in the inline we have the button, the a tag, the time, site, code, object, I, strong, and the rest. So these are some examples of block elements in the inline element. Nested HTML document. Let's take this structure for example. This structure, we have the HTML element. This HTML element is nesting the head tag and then the body tag. It is nesting the head tag and then the body tag. And then the head tag is also nesting the title tag, the title element. So HTML nesting the head element and then the body element, and then the head element is also nesting the title element. And we come to the body element, it is also nesting the H element and then the P element, the H element and then the P element. So this document is a nested HTML document. There is no way you are going to have an HTML document that is not nested. All the code you be writing henceforth will be nested. All HTML documents are nested. And these are most used HTML elements. We have the heading, that's H1 to H6 tag, the paragraph, links, images, buttons, list, div, and span. We are going to take a look at them into details in the practical section. Now, HTML attribute. HTML attribute. HTML attributes provides additional information about HTML element. So they tell us more about HTML element. For example, when you add src to an image element, it tells us the location of where the image is. So HTML attribute tells us or gives us information about the HTML element. All HTML elements have an attribute. Yes, HTML elements have an attribute. Some can do without attributes, of course. They can do without attribute, but others cannot do without attributes. Example, the image tag cannot do without an attribute. It must have an attribute, but h1 can be on its own without an attribute and still be okay. Next, attribute provides additional information about an element. As said earlier, it provides additional information about an element, like the image. For instance, src tells us the location of where the image file is, so that the browser can locate it and display it in the browser. Attributes are always specified in a start tag. Yes, it's very important. If you specify attributes in the ending tag, it won't work. Attributes are always specified in the start tag. That's what we showed earlier. The start tag, that's without the forward slash. It is specified in the start tag, that's without the forward slash. That's where attributes are being specified. Attributes usually come in name value pair. They usually come in name value pair. For example, when you specify the src, for instance, the src is the name and its value is the location of where the file is. Name value pair, the name src, the value is the location of where it is. Attributes and how they are used. These are some attributes and how they are used. For example, the anchor tag, the attribute href, is being specified in the start tag, not the end tag. The start tag, not the end tag. The image element src in the tag, this one is an empty element. It takes src. Without the src, it won't function because the browser wants to know where the file is, which file to display. We come to the paragraph, that's a page. It has a title. It's also being specified in the start tag, not the end tag. Please note this. Div, class in the start tag, not the end tag. Span, id in the start tag, not the end tag. So these are, let's say, the most used attribute that we are going to use often during this tutorial and the project that you'll be working on. Mostly used attribute. Alt is used in the image tag. Alt is used in the image tag. It specifies an alternative image for the image. When you tell a browser that, browser, this is where the image file is located, go and display it. If the browser can't find that image, it is going to use what is inside that alt attribute in the web browser. For instance, this file is located on my PC and the browser doesn't find it, and you specify in the alt attribute that picture image, the browser will display picture image, that text in the alt attribute. The class specifies a name for the element for styling. Disable specifies that an input element should be disabled. href, id, src, style, title. We are going to take a detailed in the practical section, so don't worry. Styling in HTML. Styling beautifies our HTML document. Yes, styling beautifies our HTML document. There are 3 ways of styling HTML documents. 3 ways of styling them. We have the external style sheet, that's the use of the CSS cascading style sheet. The embedded styling, that's when the style is being used as an element in the head tag. And we have inline styling, that's when the style is being used as an attribute, yes, in the starting tag of an element. But in this tutorial, we are going to look at the embedded styling and the inline styling. embedded styling, and the inline styling. So this is all for this chapter. Now it's time for us to get our hands dirty. Yes, it's time for us to get our hands dirty. Let's move on onto the practical section.